Hi, my name is Kalamali, and I'd like to welcome you to the second part of our course, which is how to stay positive. And we all know what it must be like day after day on the battlefield of everyday life, where life itself is the battle for how we can stay positive amidst the challenges that arise each day. And especially for our healthcare workers and people who give themselves each day to their service, it's so important to feel like you have the tools that you need to stay well, to stay balanced, and to stay positive. And I would like to just share a quote with you that I've found to be extremely helpful in facing this battle, where we have the power to choose with our will whether we can stay positive in the moment or whether we tend toward negativity. And just a little thought about this, you can see the way that we approach staying positive and the principles of yoga applied to positivity is a matter of the will and choice and being in the present moment and making the right choice. But this is also affected by our behaviors, our habits, and our subconscious mind. So, what I'll be trying to cover in today's talk is just about how to use the power of affirmation to stay positive, how to start to become more aware of our thoughts. As the yogis say, awareness precedes control. And then we'll be looking at some of my favorite research studies on the mind-body connection and how you can even use your physical body when perhaps your mind doesn't have the energy that it needs to stay strong, to stay positive, and you can use the physical body to improve your situation and take control of the mind. So I'd like to just start with this quote from Yogananda. It's found in this book, which I highly recommend. It's called How to Be Happy All the Time. What a title! But it's possible. There are people who have proven that it is possible to be okay no matter what comes in our day. And something that I try to live by is a sense of inner knowing from the battlefield of life that when I let myself fall into negativity, it never really ends up helping me. It's the most practical thing we can do is to try to stay positive so that we can be happy. So the quote itself is, if you choose to be unhappy, no one and nothing in the world can bring you happiness. If you choose to be happy, no one and nothing can take that happiness from you. And it's the same with positivity. I like to think of positivity as a superpower because it takes super energy and drawing all of our inner strength from within ourselves to stay positive when things get really hard. And yet, again, it's the most practical thing we can do. So one of the first things I'd just like to share with you all is going back to the axiom, awareness precedes control. So one of the exercises that I like to do with people in meditation classes or just any kind of self-improvement motivation class is having you start to introspect about what thoughts do come to mind, especially throughout the day. You'll start to do this practice and you'll notice more and more the kinds of thoughts that you carry. And once you have this awareness, that's the precursor that you need to then be able to control and shift those thoughts. And there's a wonderful quote from a yogi that we are not responsible for the first thought that comes to our mind, but we are responsible for the one that comes after. And what that means to me personally, which I hope has some meaning to you too, is that when we think to ourselves anything that pops in our mind, it's actually not necessarily something that we consciously thought of. It could be a subconscious belief. It can just come from another place, even outside of ourselves, just because we're all so connected. And with that, we might be surprised by that thought. It might be very negative. It might be criticism about another person, but what we do next is what matters most. So taking that thought and almost, again, being the warrior that you all are, coming to battle with that thought and changing it. So if you have a thought like, oh, that person, they were so mean to me, you take a moment and you pause. I think one of the most important tools for staying positive is learning to pause. And it's in that pause that you find the moment where you get to choose how you react. And so you learning to be aware of your thoughts, then you pause, and then you get to choose what thought comes, and then action comes from that thought. So if you say that person was mean to me, you can rephrase that and say, well, perhaps I don't know the full story. Or I don't want to let this affect me, so I'm going to practice thinking something that I'm grateful about in this moment, what I'm learning from this moment. Or you can just try to practice the affirmation that we'll be doing later on. And there's a fun exercise that I like to share with people, which has to do with watching where our thoughts take us. So throughout your day, you can do this exercise, and it will just help to reinforce this awareness precedes control. And what you would do is every time that you have a thought or something happens and you have a thought in reaction to what just occurred, you will say, did this thought help me to raise my energy? And with that comes the positivity, the ease of practicing positivity, or did it allow my energy to drop? And so this could be, as soon as you wake up in the morning. What's your first thought when you wake up? A really great exercise to help you to feel strong and awake and ready in the morning is to practice something where you simply lift your arms above your head, and you can say, I smile to greet the day, or today I smile. Waking up this morning, I smile. And you are practicing something where when they've proven that if you just simply lift your arms above your head, that is enough to lift your energy, lift your spirits. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when someone is sad or feeling down, their whole body tends to be sunken. It's like the energy is just dropping. Whereas when someone is happy and they're feeling well and it's almost like they're jumping with joy, that's when the energy is rising. And so you want to be noticing how these thoughts affect your ability to stay positive, and how when you first wake up, what is the first thought? How can you start your day with positivity? And then you move on to what might come next. For some people, that might be getting ready for breakfast. And then you think, well, what happens to you when you start thinking about the food you want to make that day? How can you change that moment to moment as you prepare the food, choose the food, think about how this food's going to make you feel, and transmute it into something that's a positive experience, bringing it up. And one of the fun things that I've done with students is actually have them carry around a little notepad. And as they go about their day and they're tracking their thoughts, they have a positivity column, a lifting of the energy column, and a negativity column, or a downward falling energy of pattern. So you would start to tally. This was positive. Waking up this morning, I smile and I lifted my arms above my head. Positive. And then what happened as you got out of bed? Did you start worrying? Uh-oh, negative. So it's just, you start to tally, you start to practice, and you start to see these thoughts and the patterns that they make. But really what it is you're learning how to be aware of your thoughts. And that's the first thing we all need to do. There's a story of a student at a Buddhist monastery, and his teacher, a monk, sat down with him and said, I want you to sit here and place a dot on this piece of paper for every time you have a thought. And the first time they did that exercise, there actually wasn't really many dots. What happened is that over time, something occurred that a lot of people wouldn't expect. It's not that the dots went down, but they actually, with time, with practice, the student started to have more and more dots, because he didn't realize how many thoughts he actually had each minute. And with this exercise, he became more and more aware of his thoughts. And so for this Buddhism practice, it was very important for all the students to start to learn to notice their thoughts, to become the observer. Because that's the place where we can start to master our own energy, master our own thoughts, which then leads to a brighter, better day. And of course, we want that for all of you so much because of the things you face. You want to have every little bit of self-mastery and tools and tips that you can have to improve the experiences and how you respond to them, especially when you're facing things that are without maybe even a moment to breathe in between. So taking this practice and doing it perhaps at first in a more easy environment, like at home when you're on your own, or in the car when you're dealing with traffic or having a call with a family member. And then taking that, what you're learning, and then applying it in those harder circumstances, in those environments that are more difficult. And so just to kind of take us into that next area, I did want to just encourage everyone to think about what it is that makes you happy and helps you to stay positive. Because there are going to be times when you may not be able to do it on your own. And there's a really wonderful quote from Paramahansa Yogananda, who was the author of Autobiography of a Yogi, which other teachers in this course have shared about as a very inspiring spiritual teacher that came to the West 100 years ago. And the idea is that environment is stronger than will. So there are times and situations where you'll feel that sense of, I just cannot stay positive on my own, with my own power. And what you need to do is think about people, places, and things that help you to stay positive. So for me, like, there's been many experiences as a new mother. And what I ended up having to do is, because of, sleep deprivation or just having to be so caring and giving to another being, I found that a lot of the energy that I usually relied upon wasn't there. So I would turn to the people around me, family, friends, whoever, and it would be their positivity that would help to lift my spirits and make it easier to be stronger in that. Or it would be seeing a beautiful sunset or taking my daughter out into nature. And that environment was the positive environment that I needed to be strong so that I could go home and carry that with me. And the other interesting thing about staying positive, which is connected to the idea that I introduced a little bit ago, which is the raising of our arms above our head, that has to do with that mind-body connection that I wanted to share with you all. And to think about how can we use our own bodies to change the mind state that we're in. So when we do things like lift our arms above our head, or when we even do the act of smile, there's a certain response from our physical body that's signaling to the neural chemistry of our brain and the wiring and patterns within the brain mechanism that then say, oh, this physical movement is what I do when I am happy. And there's a lot of really fun psychology research on the smile. And what they found is that if you smile, not only does it release chemistry in your brain to respond, oh, this must be happiness, but it can also do that for another person. So when you smile, someone sees you smile, that actually spreads happiness. And so one of the things that I, hear from people is, well, what can I do right now to make a difference? Because this is really hard. Times are hard. I'm very stressed. There's a lot of fear. And it's that superpower of positivity. Can you do the simple act of smiling when those times come? Or find someone to give a smile to and see what happens? A lot of people, I remember last Christmas before COVID began, going to a mall, which at Christmas time seems almost too far gone. It's a distant memory at this point. But Santa Claus was there. So you can just know that that's how crowded it must have been and busy. And there was a little Starbucks cafe in the middle of the mall. And it was just so busy, one person after one person after one person after one person. And the baristas were just, they had their heads down and they were just, nobody was looking at each other. And it just occurred to me that when you have that sense of, you're not looking up, you're looking down, you're not interacting with others, it starts to make you more and more like isolated and feeling closed in on yourself, so that your worries and your problems and your feelings becomes your own little world. But when you open yourself up, you open yourself to connection with one another, and you are more in the present. That's where you can, receive positivity and give positivity to others. So when I made my order and received it, I took that chance to just look at the barista and smile. And she smiled back, but not only was that a special moment, but also I could see the light in her eyes. It was like literally someone waking up in that moment to some joy from within themselves, but it had been activated through the exchange of a smile. And there's a wonderful phrase from Yogananda, be a smile millionaire, because that's a priceless gift that gives and gives and gives abundantly and gives so much joy to the world. And so I always love to share that practice for staying positive, because as we've seen, even the act of smiling, even standing in front of the mirror and pulling your facial muscles upward into a smile, those muscles will feed your brain the signals that it needs to say, oh, I must be happy. And so that little phrase, fake it till you make it, actually applies here with staying positive and feeling joy. You can pretend and actually start to change yourself. And when you notice yourself starting to sink into negativity with others around you, or because of the environment that you're in and the circumstances that are challenging that you're in, take a moment to step outside the room, go to your car for a few minutes, whatever you need to do to pretend to be happy until you feel it. And then you can return back to the situation. And if that's not possible, just keep practicing whatever you can do that you know works for yourself, because we all have something in ourselves that we know works to help us stay positive. It's just a matter of knowing how important it is to you, how practical it is in the scheme of life to choose to be happy, to stop repeating the patterns that make us feel like we have to fall into that negativity, and to be a warrior of joy, of positivity and courage, because it takes courage to make that choice. Because what you'll see is that there's not a lot of people who choose that every day, to try to be happy, to stay positive no matter what. So now I'd like to leave you with an affirmation. It's one of my favorite affirmations. It's from the book Affirmations for Self-Healing, and it goes like this. I'll include in our supplemental resources a little description of how to practice affirmations and about this book. But for now, you can just listen along, and then you can, perhaps you can even take note, write it down, and let me know in our forum how it goes for you if you practice this affirmation, if you start to notice changes. And this is it. I am even-minded and cheerful at all times. I know that joy is not outside me, but within. And so this affirmation you would repeat first loudly, then in a speaking voice, then quietly, and then mentally. And again, I'll include more information. But ideally, you would practice this when you first wake up. You would use it as like your battle cry throughout the day. Like I was saying, you become aware of your thoughts. You notice when they start to become negative. That's when you can pull out your tool of the affirmation to counteract it, to fight it, to bring in that joy, to say, no, I'm choosing joy. I'm choosing positivity. I am even-minded and cheerful at all times. I know that joy is not outside me, but within. And then there's a beautiful prayer here. In the calmness of meditation, at the heart of my inner peace. Help me to feel thy thrilling, joyful presence. So thank you for your time today, and I really do encourage you to feel free to share your own story of practicing these introspection exercises and the affirmation, and perhaps even that simple exercise of just lifting your arms above your head in the morning. And I wake with a smile, just whatever it is you can do, and to share with each other so that we can all help each other along this journey for joy. So thank you.